and also a decline in home ownership. So we need more housing, including social rented housing. So, I mean, supply is important, and it's important for all types and tenures. I'm sure the noble Baroness Lady Hayman would agree with that. And it's going to be difficult to do that when we've got such a mess to fix. I don't want to pretend or resolve on the fact that it will be difficult. But, you know, I think we're asking the people out there that manage their assets and also wanted to build new homes to meet the demand, you know, to walk and chew gum. We have to think about those two things and doing those two things together. But this is where I love the Reverend Prelate, the Bishop of St Albans, because he's so passionate. He's been a massive campaigner about this. But I appreciate that. But what I don't agree with, and I'm going to give an example about this, I don't agree with the sanctity of social housing providers that have built rubbish. I just don't agree with that, because, you know, whether they are a registered social landlord that owns a piece of land, and they are, and actually I'm using the phrase, they will have designed, specified and supervised the work, and they will have got in a construction company. And I've got examples of that in the area I used to be council leader. They will have done exactly the words that you used the noble Baroness Lady Hayman used to describe a developer. They would have done that, and they would have got a construction company to build on their land. And in this case, they built homes of various sizes wrapped round with aluminium composite material or high-pressure laminates without compartmentalisation. And in this case, they're going to people with narrow shoulders and saying, you pay for the mistakes that we oversaw if we can't get the funding from government. And I think that's just wrong. So I think, you know, if you're a polluter, it doesn't matter whether you're a social housing polluter or whether you're a private housing polluter. You've got to step up and take responsibility. And I've been a council leader for 6 years. I think if a council oversees their own land and builds rubbish, they've got broader shoulders than these leaseholders and these shared owners, and they should do something about it. And the bailout doesn't just come from the taxpayer. That happens to be my opinion. Those aren't in the speaking notes. But we've got to be consistent about this. We've got to be consistent about this. And the levy should apply to people who polluted, irrespective of whether they're a council, a social housing provider, or indeed a private developer, because they oversaw and built rubbish. And as we know, if you contravene building regulations, irrespective of whether an improved inspector of some description that they selected signed it off, if they didn't meet building regulations, that's why we've got the things like the perpetrator pays bill and the polluter pays bill. I feel that very strongly, actually. I feel that very strongly. We've got to be consistent about this. As hard as it is, irrespective of the noble objectives of a council, and I do believe that. I was a councillor for 16 years. So I know what it's like to serve a community. It was amazing to serve my community in the ward where I went to, where I lived for 16 years. Of course I understand that. But I would, as a council leader, I would be ashamed of building rubbish. And I would say I've got broader shoulders than some of those leaseholders, and I wouldn't run to the taxpayer to bail me out. I would try and fix it as best I can, and only go to the taxpayer if that wasn't possible. Because, when we talk about local authority resources, Noble Lord Lytton raised, I'm not sure local authorities are up to it. I completely disagree. I ran a small local authority in London. We had 5,000 people working for us. These are big entities. We've got 300 authorities in the United Kingdom. They're relatively big entities. Now, I know small district councils might be small, but I think even the Noble Baroness Lady Pinnock's, Kirklees is a big one, isn't it? You've got massive turnover. I'm sure you have a huge payroll. I believe that local councils do have the heft to contribute to the quality and safety of the built environment. So I just go and say that don't underestimate the ability of local authorities of being part of the solution. So I think with regard, I'm being told to wrap up very quickly in 5 minutes, because we want to get through to the next bit. Anyway, look, I've got lots of speaking notes, but with regard to the noble Baroness Lady Hayman of I think I've responded that we're going to resist exempting social landlords for some of the reasons why I pointed out. Because I think I've explained that in my preamble remarks.